In this video, we're looking at how to mount Elkhorn and Staghorn Ferns, and you can mount them on board, you can mount them on tree fern slabs, you can also mount them on trees. The key to successfully mounting Elkhorn and Staghorn Ferns is to mount them firmly, and Eddie from Fern Acres shows us how to do it. At the end of the video, Eddie also talks about using banana skins. Is it a good idea? Stay tuned and you'll find out.
Okay, today we're going to do a demo of how to mount a single loose elk onto a tree fern slab. This is our slab, pre-cut. You can obtain these slabs from Fern Acres. Always have an abundant stock. Basically poke your wire through, roughly 20-inch long, bent in half into a loop, bent back upon itself, and then loop through the original loop and folded back on itself. This then creates a long-term mounting point for the board not to ever fall down. Next, we get another length of wire, usually double the length of the width of the elk. We're basically going to position the elk central. Now, most people tend to mount an elk by just feeding the wire through the top of the shield. It appears ugly, it will get covered over in 6 months' time, but we generally prefer to mount it under the shields. With the wire being naturally curved, you can tend to force it under without popping out and tearing your shield apart. Roughly get it halfway sticking out each end on the back. Find your location and just basically punch the wire through. At all times maintaining the elk is in its right perspective, pointing upwards. We've got the wire out the back. This way. Basically form a loop on the end of your wire. Pull through and join your two ends. Yep. Turn them back onto each other and crimp them. Okay, next is the most important part. Grab the wire anywhere along its length and give it a really good twist. This will tension the wire and hold the elk on even firmer. As an added precaution, I actually find the wire from the front and do an extra twist. So that eye is now firmly on. As a final little secret, we tend to just trim the base on a 45-degree angle, which exposes the varying layers of the elk and encourages Spore to settle in this zone and recreate young pups. And that is a mounted elk ready to go. Okay. This time around we're going to do a quick demo of how to mount a larger specimen. Obviously the larger the plant, the bigger the board. Generally we don't cut tree fern slabs as large as this piece of treated pine. Treated pine these days doesn't seem to affect the plants. We've been mounting elks on these boards for over 15 years. There's no detrimental effect. So we're going to go through the process, and again the anchor point is the main concern. So you always try and do it over the top and we only do it once. With your treated pine boards, we tend to use a 4mm wire. It's reasonably pliable. This will create a solid anchor point that it should last as long as the board. You poke that through. Bend it over. And then we always end up finishing it on the front. And finally I just put a couple of screws in. Trusty hammer. And the tack screw. Same on the other side. Watch your fingers. And there we have the Fern Acres version of a nice solid anchor. This is the elk that we've selected to go onto this large board, as it's in proportion. You can see that it's reasonably thick cross section. Normally when we remount, I'll remove a good third just to encourage new root system, and it gives me a nice flat surface on the back. You just have to select where you're cutting. Just using an old handsaw. You always have to be careful because there's always old bits of wire, screws, nails, chain, as this plant's over 20 years old. Okay. Now we've got a reasonably flat back. It sits more streamlined to the board, and all we have to do now is attach it. Similar to the first demo, except we do use the 4mm wire, which is a larger piece. So you want a solid fixture. Again, using the curvature of the wire, force the wire through. Hopefully it doesn't come out through the front. Position it halfway between the plant. This method's slightly different in that we have to drill holes and feed the wire through at all times, keeping the plant in the right plane. Can be a bit tricky, but with experience it can be quite simple. Okay. Feed the wire down until that plant is sitting flat on both sides. Alright, this one's just about there. Next, pull the wire through. The little plant is fully seated. A little bit more. Same on the other side. You don't have to overdo the tightening because, again, we're going to tension the wire once the process is finished. This one I don't join the wire to wire, I curl it over and just finish off with that tack screw. A little bit awkward, but we get there in the end. Give it a little whack just to get your wire flat. And then we just finish the ends off so they don't pull through. That's one. And two. And now the plant's attached to the board, and again all we need to do is to tension it up. As I do this on a regular basis, I've made a simple tool for my tensioning. Just roughly does what the pliers have done in the past and just twists the wire. And I do it on both sides if possible. And now that plant is firmly on. Just to finish off, because this bottom eye is still a bit loose, it's just easier to put a roofing screw in as opposed to feeding another wire through. It gets a bit awkward. Basically, whack the screw in below the centre of the eye. Does leave a little bit of a hole, but once this green shield comes out, it'll cover over. Everything's nice and solid now. Again, I give it a light trim on the 45, just to encourage the spore to settle, and a few more young ones to pop up in the near future. And there we have it. A nice large elk mount. This one doesn't really need a trim on the back, it's already clean. A little bit of dynamic lifter, give it a good soak, hang it on the wall in position, you're ready to go. There is a bit of a misconception with a lot of people don't understand what this brown stuff is on the bottom of the leaf. That is just your spore on a mature frond of an elkhorn. Sometimes it's smooth and velvety, it hasn't been released yet. Other times it looks quite fluffy, that's where it's already released. At times you can get certain pests like to eat the spore, and they'll create nibbled ends, as this example shows. If you're concerned, a pair of scissors, you reshape that end of the leaf just to a nice point, and you remove the brown bits which can at times look a bit ugly. And then in the near future, new fronds are appearing, these old ruddy ones will fall off, and you should have a nice beautiful velvety plant. That's it. Alright, we have another form of mounting. Looks a bit brutal, just a screw through the elk. It doesn't get any simpler than that. Give it 15 years and it'll look like the one above it. Being in the fern business for over 24 years, we get asked a lot about the banana peel question. Banana peels or bananas are high in potassium, so yes, it is good to place a banana peel in the top of an elk. Just be wary, they do attract ants, and I've had infestations of European wasps in clients' plants that we were reworking, so dynamic lifter is just the simplest, quickest, cheapest method.
So that's it for mounting your Elkhorns or your Staghorn Ferns. It's easy, you can do it yourself. For more information on ferns and all sorts of other garden plants, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as always, good luck with your gardening.